Hello and welcome to another Wolftime gaming video. Today I'm going to be painting up a fox bounty hunter. Looks a little bit like a highwayman for use in Burrows and Badgers, which is a game by Oathsworn. I'm going to be turning him from this into this. Before we get started though, as usual, let's get that kettle on. So the first step, same way as I've painted the other Burrows and Badgers miniatures, is to actually base it. Once you've done that, is to give it a really good base coat. In this instance I've used Wraithbone, which is a spray by Games Workshop for use with their contrast paints. However, you can use it on pretty much anything. It's a really thin spray. It's really good for not hiding any details, and because it's lighter as well, rather than go with blacks and things like that, you can actually see the details straight off the bat. But let's get started with the colours. So in the same way as I painted some of the other miniatures that I've done recently, some of the gingery coloured ones, I wanted the fox to be a red fox essentially, which again is that gingery sort of colour. So I've used a Jokero Orange, which is a really bright orange from Games Workshop. You see it used a lot for troll slayer hair, or like dwarf hair and things like that, but it's ideal for painting like a ginger colour essentially. Mix it with a little bit of Reikland Fleshshade, which we'll do a little bit later, just to add a little bit of shading on there, but it's ideal for fox, squirrels, anything like that, and I use it for all of these really, just because it's a nice bright orange, well, I'll say orange, bright ginger colour, and that really makes it stand out nicely on the tabletop. Once I'd finished with the orange, I went for skeleton Horde for the trousers. I wanted them to be like a sort of tan sort of colour, and a really light colour as well, very much like you know, the gentry would wear in that sort of a period, or in like the 1800s and things. They always wore these sort of light coloured trousers with black boots and like with the brown part around the top, and that's what the effect I went for, and skeleton Horde's ideal for that. I then used contrast Wyldwood for some of the brown areas, namely the tops of the boots, as I was just talking about, in the brown area, and he's got a couple of pouches as well for his cartridges for his weapons, and the actual pistols themselves. The contrast Wyldwood's an ideal colour for that wooden areas of the pistols and things like that. So it's anywhere like that really I use the contrast Wyldwood for. It's a great paint. These contrast paints are really good as well, because you don't actually have to highlight anywhere, and you don't really need to add any shading either to it. So it's just a one-stop shop really to get a decent effect. The next colour I used was red essentially, and to do that I used the Blood Angels red, which is again another contrast paint, and I used it on the feather in his hat, so it stood out from the rest of it, because I was going to go with a quite dark colour for the hat, and also the edging like around his jacket as well. I wanted it to look very regimental, so red of course is a prime colour for using with like the British infantry, and I wanted it to look like that while he was still trying to stay quite dark and stay in the shadows with the dark jacket. I then moved on to using contrasts Black Templar on the rock on the base, which is great because you don't have to actually add any grey shading to it, and the actual cloak of the on the fox himself, his jacket as well. I went with a black for, and also his hat. So I wanted him to look quite dark. He's a bounty hunter. I imagine him sleeking around in the shadows a little bit, trying to hunt down his prey, and essentially wanted him to look quite dark to get that effect. I wasn't really sure whether this would work when I was actually painting it. It was a bit of a suck it and see moment. I was just testing it out really to see what sort of an effect it had, and as I was painting it, it started to come to life. I wasn't fully happy with it, but I thought, well, I'll just keep going and see what it looks like at the end. I also did his boots as well with the contrast Black Templar. As I say, it's a great colour to actually paint paint black with, because you don't actually have to add any shading to it. You don't have to highlight any areas. You can pretty much just put the Black Templar on there and forget about it. Once I gave that a little bit of time to dry, then broke out the Leadbelcher, which is a silver paint I use for pretty much any time I paint silver. I use that around his weapons, the actual pistols themselves, just along the barrel, and there's a few little areas just on them. There's like the cocking handle on the, I say cocking handle, the actual cock itself on the pistol, the bottom of the pistol grip as well, that looked like a little metal area. There's also some plates on there as well that I painted silver as well, just to highlight that. Then did the eyes. To do the eyes I used white scar just to bring that white colour back up, and then just touched a little bit of Corvus black just as a pupil, and also went around the edges of the eyes ever so slightly, just so it darkens down like the eyelids essentially, so it didn't the ginger colour and the white colour didn't sort of blend into one another. I wanted to frame the eyes really. I then used the Zandri dust on his claws as well, just so they stood out a little bit more from the rest of the orange, the Jokero Orange and the ginger colour that I'd used on the fur. I didn't want them blended in too much there. Then went on to shading the actual model on the few areas that needed shading, namely the Nuln Oil on the weapons, on the silver, because the silver bit paint always does shine up a little bit too much, and also around the nose and the ears as well, just where I'd left white, and a little bit on the tail, just to add some shading into the fur, or at least into those areas anyway. I then used Reikland Fleshshade, as I mentioned really early on in this video, to shade the actual Jokero Orange area, and it just adds that darker area. I could have used Nuln Oil, but I thought it would go a little bit too dark, and Jokero Orange has almost got that it's got that orange tinge really I didn't want to lose, and to use the Reikland Fleshshade means because it's that lighter colour, it wouldn't darken it down too much, and almost gives it that sort of reddy sort of tinge as well, which looks really good. Basing wise, I used Rhinox hide on the base, as I've done with many of the other videos. Pretty much all of the Burrows and Badgers and miniatures I've painted have got Rhinox hide on the base. It's a really nice dark brown to cover the base, give you really good coverage on there, and you don't really need to do anything to it. You can highlight it if you wanted to with the lighter orange, but I didn't in this instance because it was a nice and easy colour just to drop down and forget about really, so we could get some colour on there in the form of like the grasses and things. To frame the base, I use Corvus black as I usually do. Well, any sort of black colour will do. I use Corvus black because I think it's quite a nice colour really, and it's the one I had to hand at the time, which always helps. Always need to do 2 coats on the Corvus black as well, because you can see it's quite streaky at the moment, but putting that second coat gives you that nice matte black feel which you got there. Then it was on to actually putting some colour onto the base. I used a couple of grass tufts that I've got with a few flowers on there, and just a standard static grass, but instead of using the applicator, just put it on with a pair of tweezers, and it looks a little bit more realistic. I then give it another little bit of a coat of PVA as well, just to hold it all in place. But that's the miniature finish. I think he looks really good. I'm really pleased with him. I think the black and the red really do well together, and the orange fur really stands out nicely from the rest of the model as well. So you get lots of different variation, lots of different colours with him, and he looks really nice. I think he looks great, and I can't wait to get him on the tabletop. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, as much as I enjoyed making it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to see any more. The link in the middle of the screen there you can see as well. There's loads of Burrows and Badgers mini painting that I've done. Hit that, see a few more of those, and I'll see you in the next one.